Welcome to the exit ticket, an opportunity, I hope, for you to reflect on your past year and a half as an educator during pandemic learning. I'm super curious to hear about your experience, and I wonder if you can start by um, sharing what you feel comfortable about with what you teach and the kind of school that you teach at.
Sure. Also, I love the name, the exit ticket. It's
Aha!
perfect.
Teachers get it, right? Opportunity to
Teachers
reflect.
get it. It's just a full teacher inside joke. Okay. I teach in Oakland, California at Emerson Elementary. I teach third grade. I'm starting my 5th year in Oakland, and this will be my 3rd year teaching third grade. I taught 4th and 5th for my first 2 years. Emerson is a historically Black school in North Oakland. So it's in a pretty white and gentrified neighborhood, but the majority of our students are Black and brown, with a small percentage of families from the neighborhoods, white families from the neighborhoods send their kids to Emerson as well. It is a small school. There's about 350 kids, TK through 5th grade, with a big special ed population. We have a number of different special ed programs happening at Emerson. Yeah, that's Emerson. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit about your values as a teacher? What anchors your classroom? And maybe there's a pre-pandemic, post-pandemic piece of that, but who is Ms. Grill and what's the classroom all about?
Yeah, I think my classroom is grounded in building a community and relationships. One of my roles at school and within the district is part of the SEL, social emotional learning, lead teachers, and that's one of my roles as a teacher leader, is to help bring SEL into everything we do at Emerson, which is easy because everybody I work with shares that value. But that's definitely something that grounds my day-to-day in my classroom is the relationship. I want my students to enjoy coming to school and look forward to coming to school and feel safe at school. Obviously, some days nobody wants to be at school. Some days I don't want to be at school because we're humans and we want to be home alone or doing other things, and that's fine. And I want them to be able to feel fine and feeling that way, and be open about this is where I'm at right now. This is who I am. This is how I'm showing up, and be able to kind of meet them where they are. I think pre to post pandemic, I think pre-pandemic, especially because I was still earlier in my public school career, I'm having my own classroom. It was harder to put that into practice because I felt a lot more pressure about getting everything done and getting all of the content met and getting them ready for all the tests and da-da-da-da. And, so if a kid was having a hard day, it felt like this is a distraction from what we need to be doing. And during the pandemic, and I think it's double. I think it's pandemic and its experience. I think those two things kind of happened concurrently for me. My priorities, it was easier to really practice that priority shift, right? So for example, my students were having a really hard time with our math unit around telling time and elapsed time, because we didn't have the same, normally in the classroom, they all get a little mini clock. They all have this time, this number line we all use, and it's really hands-on. And this group, for whatever reason, was having a really hard time without all of that. And whereas the other 3rd grade class, my grade level partners class, they got it. They were this is fine. This internet clock is working for us. My group, the internet clock was deeply not working. And I had this moment of this is not worth it. What are we doing here? You guys, kids were getting upset. Kids were crying. Parents were frustrated. I was getting frustrated, and I was like, let's stop. Like, we will figure out how to teach you about time and elapsed time in fourth grade or whenever we're back in the classroom and you can touch a clock. But for now, like, let's go do something that like you feel you're making growth in and you feel good and is working and can work in the space that we're at. And I think for me, like, that clarity is something that I really hope to bring back, even though like the pressure is on, like the pressure from the district and from everything. I feel like from the district all the way up to like get kids back on track feels really, and I was just in a meeting with some coworkers. It's a lot. They're adding assessments. They're adding like, I don't know. So I'm really hoping I can hold on to the like, if this is not working for us in the moment as a community, let's table it and come back to it in a different way, because suffering through this just to say like, oh, we finished this unit isn't worth it. And it was certainly not worth it during the pandemic when we were all sitting at our computers from our houses, right? And so I really want to be able to like bring that with me. Yeah. While continuing to like, the goal is that my kids learn content and learn the standards that they need to learn, but also doing it in a way that that's not causing them pain and stress and then in turn causing me pain and stress, because when they don't get it, I feel feelings around that. And so really working towards like, I don't know, building a community where we could say like, we're gonna come back to this. This is not working, and that's okay. Like, that's fine. So
I can hear this is important to you, so I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. When there was something content challenging with your third graders, the emotional disruption was so great that you have decided as a teacher moving forward to prioritize their feelings about learning and about joy in learning versus suffering about learning over, say, time telling.
100%, because they're 8 and 9. There is plenty of time in their future to learn how to. I don't know when I learned how to. And this is a very specific thing, but I think it's true for all of it. I think like our third, fourth, and fifth graders need to leave elementary school feeling really excited and in love with the act of learning. Because once they get to middle school, the stakes do get higher and they do feel more stressed. And I think I want them to walk away saying like, even when learning is really hard, it's something I'm excited to do. Even when there's a math concept or a reading concept that I'm having a hard time with, it's still worth putting in the effort. It's still fun, and I can engage with it for who I am as I am. And but the systems don't really allow for that. So like one of my big things right now in Oakland is pushing Oakland unified leaders to be more thoughtful about assessments, because right now we assess our students in assessments that are used for like big picture data, right? So I assess my students in a variety of ways, but when it comes to how is this school doing, or how is this group of students doing, it's only based on standardized computer-based assessments. That's the only way we determine whether a student knows something. And that's not right. That's wrong. That's the wrong way to do it. And so, I was talking to a district leader who was saying, well, in high school, the kids do a capstone project and they can do they have more freedom to kind of choose their topic, choose how they want to show understanding of that topic. And I was like, great, why aren't we doing that in fifth grade? Why aren't we doing that in eighth grade? Why aren't we doing that in third grade? Like, I could do capstone projects with my kids, but the data at this point is at least to the district, is meaningless to them. The only data that matters is from the test. And so I'm really, really feeling, and the pandemic just like exasperated this like clarity for me that this is not the right way to be it's one way of many ways to assess what we know and what students know. So that's a big kind of driving factor for me right now. But it is definitely like a glacial change. Like nothing's happening. I'm just like, either like preaching to the choir or yelling into a void, but nothing's actually happening.
Well, let's dive into this crevasse together, because you
Okay.
said that the pandemic has made your disappointment and frustration around assessment even more greatly inflamed. Why? Like, please connect your values of SEL with the testing and where you are inspired to be.
Well, I think one thing during the pandemic as teachers, we got a much bigger visual into kids' homes and what's happening at homes and the inequity of what's happening at home. And you could see really clearly that in some ways the classroom is the like evening of the playing field, right? Because when they come in, everybody theoretically has access to the same books, the same computers, the same programs, the same amount of time, the same amount of quiet, the same amount of loud. It evens it out a little bit. Whereas at home, we had no control over any of that. So it was really clear very quickly who was getting support at home, or what that support looked like, or what who had a quiet, who was sitting in their own room at a desk with their door closed versus who was in the kitchen with 5 other kids and a parent and a baby, or who was going from grandma to auntie to the daycare and back every day. And so I had to do a lot of work around like, okay, we can only do things that everybody can access. So like, what does that look like, right? And that would look like doing a lot of like, okay, come by Emerson for these many hours and pick up these science materials so we can do an experiment with magnets. But then once we got to the magnet thing, half the class was like, I don't know where those magnets are. I was like, cool, great. And also, yeah, of course you don't know where those magnets are because your parents picked them up 3 weeks ago, right? So I think that piece, and then being told, knowing all of that, you need to give your kids these assessments at home, and we're going to make decisions about your school or about these students based on these assessments. And it was like, wait, this is asinine. How could we possibly think that this is okay? How could we possibly think it's appropriate to ask a student who is, being looked after by their high school brother to take an assessment while the other kid's mom is sitting right there potentially helping them? That data is invalid. And if the data is invalid, what is the point of taking the test? And so that was kind of where the conversation started. And then it was just like, well, what is the point of taking these tests in the classroom? Like, we know that if a kid is having an off day, if a kid comes into the classroom and they got in a fight with somebody on the way to school, they're not going to perform well on an assessment. And if this is their one shot to show what they know, what a closed-minded way of saying, like, this is how we determine your skills and your abilities. And so, and I say all this, and when I look at my kids' data and I see red on red on red, I'm upset. And I want them to do well, because it's also, I know, a reflection on me, right? Like, I just saw the district has named my school as a low quality school because our test scores are low, and being low quality immediately puts us at risk of getting closed. And, meanwhile, the praise we're getting from other district leaders of like all the work we're doing around SEL, all the work we're doing around growth in our school culture and community, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, our test scores are bad, and that's what they look at. So, right when we started this call, I was just reading this article about it, and I'm like, I can't believe our name's being thrown around here. And, the risk is like, okay, so if we wiggle our way out of being on this list, they're just going to fill it with another Black and brown school and close that one instead, right? And so, when at the end of the day, this data is being used to displace kids out of their schools and displace families out of their schools. And then we wonder why, you know, the like heart of Oakland is changing, and why people, Black and brown people, you know, forgetting how much it costs to pay rent. Like, why would you want to stick around if the messages you're getting are like, this community is not important, we're going to close this school, right? So you like seeing how the like long term, how this data is used has also really like flamed this like need to fix this whole system. So I can't remember if that answered your question.
It's beautiful. I want you to process this. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate, you know, being able to talk about it, and, you know, because I think, and you know, there's nuance in this. Of course, we have to be assessing our students. We have to know where our students are at. We have to know if they know the content that we've been trying to teach them and are ready to move on to the next step. But there's simultaneously, it has to be different ways for them to show what they know, because they're all, you know, we spend so much time in the district, spend so much time talking about how all learners are unique, and, you know, everybody's path to learning is different, and da 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 da. But at the end of the day, we only give them one way to show what they know. That doesn't make sense. Those two things don't add up. So yeah, I can't remember what the rest of the question is.
Surfaced the like the political tension, schools are politicized, of wanting to know how our students are doing, and the need of schools to actually care for our children and to celebrate all sorts of students. You are highlighting your Oakland Black and brown students. I would love to know about the internal teacher experience of this. Like, you just gave me the landscape of what is the fight. What is Allie feeling as a teacher experiencing the fight?
I feel like a lot of things all the time, obviously. I get frustrated that this is like part of my job, and that like I have to be like that my job is political, because at the end of the day, I want to go into work, I want to teach my kids, I want to learn from them, I want to build community with them, and then I want to go home and I want them to be able to do the same. But that's just not the reality, right? And one thing I really like about teaching in Oakland is that it does feel really connected to the community of Oakland. I think the Oakland schools, you can't disconnect Oakland as a city and as a place from the Oakland schools. They are intertwined, and I really like that. So there's frustration that this is such a political space, and that was felt really deeply this year during the like reopening fights, and feeling really I mean, going on Twitter and reading what parents were saying about us was heartbreaking. And knowing how hard we were all working, and the like commitment that was put in across the city and across the district to every piece of remote learning and COVID support and da da da, and then to see what parents were saying about us it sucked. You know, and I think I have a really strong community of educators at my school, and then also within the union, that like we can really like process all of that together. But at the end of the day, it's hurtful. And at the end of the day, it's also activating, because I'm like, yeah, you want to come into my classroom, you can come see what I'm doing, right? Like, I feel very strongly in that, like, I am doing the work that I'm supposed to be doing to support my students and my families, and I know my students and families would back me up on that. So, you know, there is an element that it is like, it gets me like riled up, it gets me like working harder and pushing harder, you know, like, right. It's like sometimes feels so minor. Like, my grade level partner and I are thinking really deeply about homework right now, and how to like make homework more equitable and more meaningful, and da 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 da. And it seems so small, but at the end of the day, it's just like another piece of this that like we want to make sure what we're doing is the right thing for our students. And even if it means we try something for a couple of months and we're like, that did not, that didn't work. So we gotta like go back to something else. Like that's fine. I feel like another thing that I think the pandemic has pushed me to do is just like take more risks in my teaching, because everything got blown up. Everything I knew about teaching, everything we all knew about teaching just like exploded, right? And so my principal, we were just in this meeting, we're starting like working groups for the return to school, and she was like, before we start, like I want to look at what we did a year ago. And she had this like massive list of all of the tasks we accomplished last summer to get back, to rebuild school, right? And and I was looking at that and I was like, wow, we like that took a lot of like creativity and flexibility and like willingness to just like take risks in what it was going to look like. And so I think that's a piece that I really want to like hold on to as an educator, is like the willingness to take risks, to try new things, to see how it works, and and worry less about what parents who don't know me, what parents who don't know my student communities, what they say and what they think, right? Because like at the end of the day, like I show up for my students and my families, and nobody else matters really, unless I mean they matter, but they also don't, because like they're not part of our like community that we've like developing and are growing together. So what else? I also like, there was a part of like pandemic teaching that I really loved. I loved like getting to see my kids' pets and their siblings and their parents and aunts and uncles, and getting to see like letting them into my world a little bit more, right? Like they knew the layout of my house, they knew where my cats were at any given time, like they knew what my world looked like, and I liked that. I really, and to an extent that happens in the classroom, but obviously not like this. And so I think another thing is thinking about like, what does this homeschool connection look like when we're back, and not losing this like bridge we built, because it was really powerful, and really special to just like have that level of relationship. Yeah.
Well, I love that you just concluded with this idea of relationship, because when I asked you what your values are as a teacher, that was immediately what you went to. So how were you in relationship with students and families during pandemic learning? And then secondarily, I want to hear about your relationship with yourself. So first, building relationship in the digital classroom.
Yeah. I think it depended on the kid and the family, right? So some families had my personal phone number. We were FaceTiming all the time. We were like, really in it together. Other families relied on the like messaging app we were using, and that was like the way they wanted to communicate with me, and that was fine. Similarly, some kids, eventually got my phone number and they would text me, and that, for some kids who were home alone, that was the easiest way to be like, don't forget to sign on to math. Like, like come, right? Like going through a family member wasn't the most efficient way. It was really easier to just message them because they were on their iPad or whatever they were on, to be like, hey, I need you to sign on, and then they would. Some kids really needed me. So like on one of the apps we use, they could message me privately. And so some kids would just like message me once or twice a day just to be like, for me, it felt like they just needed the touch point to be like, I'm here, you're here, we're all here. Like, right? Everybody's here. I'm like, yeah, I'm here. And other kids just showed up, did their thing, and signed off, and that was it, right? They didn't need as much of that, like, and just recognizing that that's like what they needed, and they were okay with that, and that was okay too, right? Not like, and similar with parents. Some parents didn't need to hear from me all the time. They were like, are they, showing up? Are they doing what they need to do? Great, cool. And that's the same in the classroom, right? And like, I try to reach out with good news. And I also tell my parents, like, if you're not hearing from me, then everything is perfect and we're fine and we're happy and we're moving forward. And like, I'll reach out, I'll send home little notes, but like I can't be in contact with everybody all the time. And so yeah, some parents were just like, let me know if you need me. If not, like I'm gonna be at work. And like they'll be there, and so that worked also. And I think with myself, a little bit in the minority of this in the teaching community, but I also really love working from home. I just love being at home. I love it. So for me, I was like, and I live alone. I was able to set up a classroom space. I had internet. I had quiet. I didn't have to deal with roommates or partners or kids so I was pretty happy like with the setup of working from home. I really appreciated being able to take a break and go to the bathroom whenever I wanted to go and just be like, put them on mute them basically and be like, I'll be right back. And then like go to the bath. I can't do that, right? I can't eat a snack whenever I want to eat a snack. And like, so that piece of it, I really enjoyed. And again, it's like another piece of like, how can we make the profession more sustainable by like not, killing ourselves and not drinking water because we can't go to the bathroom during the day, right? So like that piece I was like really into. And I feel like, there were definitely things I wish I had done differently. There were things I think I could have done better. It was like not a perfect, nothing, it wasn't perfect, but I think the like amount of effort I put in and the like ways I showed up for my kids and families, I'm really proud of, and will hold that pride and keep that with me, even though, yeah, some days were really hard. And there were days where I cried at the end of the day, but there's days that I cry at the end of the day. And, that's not like days are hard in the classroom, right? You're dealing with 25 different humans with 25 different needs and 25 different emotions and 25, and some days it's just, that's too much. It's too much. You just have to cry at the end of it. And so I had to, on those days I had to remember like this could have been a hard day, pandemic, no pandemic, classroom, no classroom. Like it's okay to feel like that didn't go well. And so yeah, I feel really proud of what we accomplished. And when I say we, I said me and my grade level partner specifically worked really collaboratively together. And then also my whole staff really, I think, did something really powerful over the last year and a half, I guess.
It makes sense that while you're reflecting, you feel pride in your flexibility, creativity, resilience, and then all the more painful to be, as you mentioned, on Twitter and see the negativity that would be upsetting. It makes a lot of sense. I would love to know what it was like during a pandemic with learning from home when racial tensions surfaced to new heights. What was that like?
Yeah. It was, oh God. It was a lot. It was heartbreaking. I teach mostly Black kids and black and brown, but primarily my students are Black. So their like pain and fear that was coming through was heartbreaking. Especially, and then when things were happening during the summer and I didn't have access to all of them and I didn't have access to my families as much, that felt really hard because I just wanted to like sit with all of them in a room and be like, we're safe, we're loved, you're loved, but I couldn't, right? And so that was one piece of it. Another piece is that I often have to remind myself that my third graders are babies. They're kids because I've worked with middle schoolers, I've worked with upper elementary, I've worked with high schoolers. And so sometimes I need to like curb myself and be like, we don't actually need to talk about all of this because you're 8 years old. And sometimes some of my kids don't know what's going on. And that's okay because they're babies, they're children, right? And we forget. And so then there would be the moment of like, how much do I really want to talk to you about this? And how much do I want to let you just be kids and not be worrying about all of this? So that came up too, and that's a tricky balance, I think, especially as a white woman teaching Black and brown kids, because like it's their lived experience, it's not mine, right? I don't have anything I can teach them about this. I can listen and I can hold space for that, but I'm not doing the educating around this. And so that's a big piece as well. I will say my staff, I feel really lucky because my school in Oakland is not all white teachers. I work with a number of Black educators. I work with a number of Black women, many of whom have been teaching for a lot longer than I have. And so following their lead in a lot of ways was important, and just kind of listening and sitting and being part of conversations, but also just like being, again, like sharing space where they could really share their pain and their fears. And so that was a piece. We did some work at Emory, we like had a mural art day, and kids could come and write things, chalk art, and just some ways that we could try to be together over the summer. And then, I think right now, and this actually came up in the meeting I was just in, is so we've had these like creepy dolls in my background. I'm like trying to I'm in my parents' house.
No judgment.
Somebody brought up today, like, we've now had a long time to talk about how Black Lives Matter, to read all the books, to do all of this. What are we doing, right? Is this a moment where we're going to rework some of our systems at school to say, like, that's actually not an anti-racist system, right? Whether we're talking about like behavior systems, homework, again, right? Like all of these now it's time to say, like, what are we willing to actually change? What are we willing to actually do? And I think people are really excited to like get back and kind of feel like we've had a year and a half of a clean slate, kind of, at least in like structures at school. And I think there is a lot of excitement around that. Like, for example, we have always gone like back and forth around hats and hoods in the classroom. And like, this is a conversation we need to have as a staff, or like, are we really going to be policing what our kids are wearing in the classroom? Are we really going to be policing primarily what our Black boys are wearing? If they want to wear a hood and it's not affecting their learning and their interactions, who cares? Why are we doing this? Why are we setting these arbitrary rules just because they've always been set, and that end up, I can't tell you how many fights in my first 2 years of teaching I got in about wearing hats and hoods, because it's just a power battle. That's all it is. That's the only thing that matters. It's like, who's in control.
It's not an arbitrary rule. It's a white status.
Right.
Yes, this
right.
is how you show up professionally as white people.
Right. And so, it's those little things, right, that we are really going to be thinking about and looking at and thinking like, okay, yeah, for a year and a half, we've all been reading the book. We did the book club. We drew chalk on the sidewalk. We did all the things. And now we're back in our classroom. We're back in our school setting. What is it going to look like when a kid acts out? What is it going to look like when a kid makes the wrong choice, right? Are they going to the principal's office? Are they getting suspended? Are we, what is that really going to look like? So I think it has given us a lot of time, and me too, to reflect, to think about like, oh, like there are things I did in my first 2 years that were steeped in white supremacy, that were steeped in like, just like my own, what I knew to be right, that I have, unlearned. And now it's like, now we have to get into like the messiness of actually implementing it. So I'm excited. I think we have the ability to do something really powerful at Emerson in the next couple of years around this, and really create a school that's like not only like based in social justice and that like we're saying all of the things, but is like a truly anti-racist and safe space for our Black and brown students. And that's being led not by white teachers, but by Black and brown students, families, educators, and that we're just kind of like we're all part of the conversation together, but that's not being led by us.
Mm.
So
Thank you, because you, in your way and with your perspective, have answered a central question of my capstone in this project, which is that question of what are we doing?
mm,
Doing is the heart of teachers. We are
right.
never just feeling or living. We have to do. And your answer is, Rebecca, I'm excited. The
Yeah.
doing actually is not heartbreaking, though what's happening in the world is heartbreaking. The doing, you said 3 different times, excitement, exciting, excited.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because that's the, you know, and that's the fun part of teaching, right? Because if that's not exciting to think about, how are we gonna like, I know this is gonna sound nerdy, how are we gonna make homework better? It's not like the most exciting thing, but that's the
Mm.
crux of it, right? How are we making this experience better for all
Mm.
of us? You know, and something that I, you know, the overall system of public education is not going to change right now. That's just not just not happening, right? We're staying the course. So what can we do in our small little bubble, whether it's the bubble of my classroom, the bubble of my grade level, the bubble of Emerson, the bubble of Oakland, that will make it better for the kids that we serve? And that's a conversation I see happening in my union all the time. The Oakland Teachers Union is, yes, like created to like support teachers, and you know, it is a union, but it's so much bigger than that. And it's really, I would say the work is really steeped in like, what are we doing to make this schooling experience better for all of our students, all of our families, all of our educators, and like the community of Oakland as a whole. And so I've also gotten to learn from a lot of like veteran teachers and veteran union leaders, about that, kind of how we fit that work into the day-to-day that we're doing in the classroom.
Yes.
So
Allie, who took
yeah.
care of you and how did you take care of yourself?
It's a really good question. My Sydney Dexter, Sydney, my grade level partner, is my, she took care of me a lot. We took care of each other a lot. We were in it, and yeah, so that, she was really vital to like my success mentally and physically. I feel really grateful, and it was like very mutual. We were like definitely a very strong team, both in our school and just
Why
as
was she
well.
vital? What was she doing? What was that?
It was a lot of things. It was, I mean, on the like the work side, we can split, because we're so aligned, we can split the work. She's like, I'll plan a week of math, I'm gonna plan a week of reading, you know, and whatever. And so my workload was cut in half. So that like in its own self is crucial. And I don't think I will ever teach without a teaching partner ever again. Where, and again, we're not in the same classroom, but like a grade level partner where that work is split. So that's one piece, you know, and then it was also like a lot of checking in, a lot of just like FaceTiming during the day, a lot of bringing each other food if we needed food, a lot of like encouraging going for walks. Like she's, you know, she was my person. And it like, you know, there was a minute where it looked like I was going to move up to fourth grade for this coming year, and we were going to be separated. And it was just heartbreaking because I was like, I don't want to do this job without a teammate. And like, I think my new partner would have been wonderful, but it wouldn't have been, I mean, Sydney, I can text at all hours of the day to be like, I have this thought, what do you think? Or like, look at this picture of this baby I just saw, you know, like it just is totally switched. Or not switched, but like it's moved out of just being like coworkers to, she's my friend, she's my pal, she's part of my community, and that's important for me. So the trust is really deep. And then the other piece of it, totally outside of work, I was potted up with my two best friends and their son. So I was able to, you know, sleep there on the weekends. I was able to have time with, he's 3.5, with him. We developed like him and our relationship became really different because that was all we had, right? We were a little pod. So that was that family unit was really important to me, to just like, yeah, you know, that was somewhere I could go for dinner if I like didn't have the energy to make food, or yeah. So that unit was really important as well. And then other than that, I don't know. I feel like I did what a lot of us did during the pandemic, which was like March, April, May. I was like going for walks, working out online, like zooming with my friends, having a happy hour, super. And then it was just like, and then I was like, I haven't gone for a walk in weeks, right? Like, and I think that was kind of the trajectory many of us took on this like crazy journey of being in quarantine and in this like crazy world. But yeah, I feel like there was a number of people that I could like, yeah, really deeply just like fall back on. And yeah.
And what would you like people to know about teachers, maybe during the pandemic or teachers in general? Like what understanding could enhance people's compassion for educators?
I think there's a couple things. I think it was like that moment in early pandemic when everybody was like, remember when everybody was like, oh my God, teachers. It was like the spring, it was like March, April, May, right? They work so hard. We love teachers, da 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 da. And then it immediately was like, fuck teachers.
Oh,
Can
that's
we go
right.
back to that? Like, so, you know, joking aside, like, I want people to recognize, like, how hard this is and how
Mm,
hard it is to be in, to be good at it. It's not that hard
mm,
to walk into a classroom and be bad or average. It's really hard to be good at what we do. And those of us, and I think people don't realize how many good teachers exist and how hard people work to be that good, right? So like when people just shitting on Oakland teachers, I'm like, look around. Like maybe, yes, maybe you are one of the few people who have a shitty teacher. I don't know what's going on, but like open your eyes and look around because that's not the case. That's not what I'm seeing. Because I'm in meetings with
mm.
teachers across the district all the time, and everybody is like, "Did you try this? What about this? Look what my kids did." Da 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 da. And I'm like, I didn't even think about that, and I thought I was at the top of my game, right? And like, so there's just this like constant like elevation of like ideas and practices, and you know. So I want people to know like teachers work really hard to be good at what we do, and like we don't do it out of the goodness of our heart. We don't do it because we're like martyrs. It's our job, right? So that was like another narrative that was really grinding me, is like, you know, I don't need extra pay because it's just like I'm a teacher and I do it for the kids. I'm like, no, 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 no. We deserve to be paid, and we deserve to be paid really, really well because we put a lot into it. You know, not
Mm,
only for just like I'm still on summer break and I just met with 10 teachers from my school to talk about the fall, right? Like we are all over the country zooming in to be like, okay, let's start putting it all together. What are the pieces we need to do? Da 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 da. You know, people are like, when can I get into my classroom? When can I do this? When am I going to have these books? Yada yada, right? It's a, so yeah, we get this rest and respite, which is so important. But we're working, we're reading the books, we're like
mm.
gearing up for the next fall. And one of my teachers was like, or coworkers was like, here's something I did during summer school. It was so dope. How can we like make this happen with 25 kids in the classroom? Like, so these ideas were like constantly coming, and it is a job that like, yes, we care deeply about. We do it, we love it, most of us, most of the time. But also just a job. It's a job. It's a job we deserve to be paid for. It's a job we deserve to get respect for. And yeah, I don't know. I want people to like, I don't know, just like put some respect on our names and pay us, and like recognize that like we are all, and we're human and we're flawed and we make mistakes and we don't, and that's another thing. Sometimes I think we get like beat down for like any teacher who like does the wrong thing or says the wrong thing. I'm like, yeah, that human being made a mistake. Like, what are the
Mm.
expectations right now? Like, it's like this like balance between we are expected to be perfect all the time, but also like there's like no like, yeah, there's just like no wiggle room for error, I guess.
Mm.
um
Well, I think I heard you
so
say that passion for teachers is an understanding of the hard work and And compassion would be respect for teachers by giving appropriate pay.
Mm.
And compassion would be seeing the humanness of teachers.
Right. Right. And
Mm.
like when I was a kid, I didn't know my teachers were human beings with lives and like who were getting in fights with their partners and coming to work the next day or da 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 or like coming to work with a headache. I didn't understand. They were just this like monolith of a thing,
Mm.
and so I get with like the kids and but like with other adults, I'm like, yeah, our work looks really different from what a lot of people do. So I think it's probably hard to understand because like if you've never done it, you don't understand because the last time you did it, you were a kid and you were like, this teacher is a creature I do not get. Right? There's no understanding. And so if you haven't re-entered that world as an adult, which a lot of people don't do until they have their own kids, it's a world you don't really get. I think. And so, and then another piece that I would like I am constantly talking about is like, just trust us. Like, what other profession do you have constant people telling you, like, that's not how you should do that? I'm like, did you go to graduate school? I don't think you did for this. Maybe you did for something else, but you sure as hell didn't to become a teacher. Like, but there's this like lack of trust that we are the experts in what we're doing and that we have to rely on other people to tell us how to do it. And I'm like, who knows best than a group of teachers on how to educate kids? Not really anybody, but it's like the kids and the teachers. Like that's who needs to be in conversation. So yeah, that's another piece.
And what do you need to hear? What do you need to tell yourself? What is a mantra for you to practice your own self-compassion?
I think one thing for me is like, will my kids, when they're in high school or college and they think back about their fourth or fifth or third grade teacher, will they say to themselves like, she had my back, she loves me, she was on my team, she fought for me? And if the answer is yes, and I can like feel that at the end of the day, then like I've done my job. I want, even on the days that are hard, even on days when they like are all driving me crazy and my like frustration level is high, or maybe it's not them, but it's something else. Like, did they know that like I was showing up for them? And if they do, and I feel like my kids always do, even in like my first 2 years were messy. It was messy. And some days are still messy, but like at the end of the day, do my kids know that I'm showing up for them? They do know that, right? And that's kind of what my like mantra is. Like, did I make a space for myself and for them to be real and to know that we were like in this thing together? Yes, then like great, let's like move on to the next day. Yeah.
So self-compassion for you is knowing that you did your best to create relationship, togetherness, and love.
Yes, I would like you to write that down for me. Really good. Yeah, I think so. And like I've had to do a lot of work around like I did what I could do, right? I can't change the systems of the public education. I can't change cycles of poverty. I can't make my kids' day-to-day lives any easier when they're home, right? I just can't. And that was really hard in the beginning, but now I can like do what I can do in the classroom. I can do what I can do in communication with their families. And then I have to let go and say like, I'm here, I'm a touch point. I will, you can reach out if you need me. And also like, I'm going to go live my life and you're going to go live your life, right? Like that had to be a piece of it as well. Getting rid of like the guilt of like, traveling and leaving and living the life that I have is very different than the life that my students have, and that's just the reality of it, and I can't change that. So giving myself a little compassion around that as well.
Final question. I'd love for you to reflect on what it's like for you to have 55 minutes of space to connect with yourself, reflect on your experience. How are you feeling now that you've had this time?
Yeah, I feel really, I'm like, this was really good timing for me because I'm like just starting to get back into the like work mode,
Mhm.
right? My like, I got my notebook out. I'm like looking at
Mhm.
schedules. I'm like slowly starting to like play around with like getting back into work mode. And so it's really nice to like spend some time before that happens thinking about like, okay, what was this experience like? What were the, positives? What do I want to bring with me? And it helps that you and I have a relationship and like know each other and I like trust you. And, it's not easy to like, especially because, what we've already talked about, like people are so distrustful of teachers right now. So it's hard to say like, yeah, I have flaws. I fucked shit up, like da 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 da. So it's like it's good practice to like own my flaws and the whole, and mistakes I've made, and also allow myself to like be really proud of the work that we did and hold those two. I think those two things can be held simultaneously. But yeah, I feel good. I feel ready to start really getting into the next year and planning and thinking ahead and trying to like start to make sense of what it's going to feel like to go back. And yeah.
It's so it's interesting that the reflection creates energy for what's next and what are we doing next, right? It's not just a reflection, it's the fuel for the next school year.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think there's space to just like be reflective and not kind of think forward. And but I also think just, and that's part of just who I am, like if I think like, okay, I'm reflecting on something that like I did that I, think I could do better. I'm like, all right, well, let's fix it. Let's do it better next time. And like, yeah. So yeah.
Mm. Allie, thank you so much for talking to me.
Okay, you're so welcome. So what's the end goal?
This is it. Okay, cool. So thus ended. Thus ended. Okay, cool. So wow, that was I just wanna